Okay, we can share.
Yeah, we can share. Okay.
I don't see it. I don't see it on your Facebook page yet, Matt.
You probably have to refresh.
Refresh, okay. No. Is it on Save Jersey too?
Yeah, it's on Save Jersey. That's where it's at.
Oh, Save Jersey, okay. Wait a minute.
Dun, 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 dun. Josh, our friend Josh is telling you to refresh, Dan.
Oh, yeah, there it is. I see it.
There she blows.
All right. Let me see. No. Yeah, no.
We're giving everybody a chance to kind of log in.
All right. I shared it.
Perfect. That's always the most suspenseful part of the evening, Jesse. Okay, I think we got it on Twitter now. Oh, my fat fingers, I can't type.
It runs a little behind on, yeah, there's a delay, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, that works.
View speaker. Okay.
All right, everybody got their shares in?
Yeah.
I'm always telling Jesse, you'll probably appreciate this. I'm always telling Dan I'm extremely jealous of his library setup.
This is not a backdrop. This is a real library. Well, but it's, I always say it's actually much smaller than it appears to be, though.
Well, it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anytime my grandkids come, they want to know if I've read all of these books.
Have you?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you know, there's some really big, like there's some big coffee table books that I haven't read word for word, because with books like that are such a large format, they're not always easy to read because of the long, the width, you know, your eye doesn't travel that distance.
Well, right. I don't think coffee table books are for reading. I think they're for looking, right?
Yeah,
Which is a different
they're
thing.
not for engrossing reading anyway. But
It's like political mailers. You don't read them, you look at them.
yeah.
Right? All right. I think we're good to go, gents. Everybody set? Hi, Carol.
Yeah, we're set.
Hi, back to you. So welcome again to another edition of Save Jersey's Wednesday Night Live. I am Matt Rooney, the blogger-in-chief of SaveJersey.com, and I'm once again joined by my friends. I don't know which end of the screen you're looking at, so saying left or right may not really make much of a difference, but I've got in his, I don't know what hat that is, Art. What hat are you wearing? I can't see. Is it a Reese's Pieces hat?
It is.
There you go. In a Reese's hat is Art Gallagher, one of the Jersey Shore's finest political strategists, consultants, wise men. He wears many hats, just not Reese's hats, but also he's the founder and editor-in-chief over at More Monmouth Musings. And then with the formidable looking library behind them, I have my friend from the western end of the state, Dan Cerrucci, a PR expert. You were a professor at one point, Dan. You run a Broadway blog. You bring the color and the flavor to our Wednesday night gathering. So it's always good to see you.
Thank you. Thank
My
you.
friend.
I want to tell you about my secret desire, though, before we go any further, Matt.
A secret desire.
Yeah.
Dan, this isn't that kind of video.
This is
I've
a
written-
family
I've written.
This is a family program.
This is it's a fun secret desire. I've written all kinds of pieces, all kinds of op-eds, all kinds of stuff over my career, but my real desire, and I haven't been able to crack it yet, is to write an entire op-ed in the style of Matt Rooney. That being, every sentence in the op-ed would end with a question mark.
I do love question marks. It's true.
Yes, yes, an entirely interrogatory op-ed. I'm working on it, Matt.
Well, you know what? Maybe I should do one of those skills classes that you're always seeing advertised on social media online, where I teach you how to write entire essays with just one type of punctuation mark. You've given me a good idea. I might be able to make some side scratch.
This is part of what makes you unique and compelling.
My wife reminds me every day how unique I am, Dan.
There you go.
Every day of my life. But speaking of unique individuals, which we had a tortured way there of getting to a good segue. I have, and it's not very ambiguous because he's got his campaign banner behind him, my friend of many years. I met him in 2009. I think the first time might have been the Atlantic County Convention in 2009, where I also interviewed Chris Christie for the first time. Not as excited in retrospect that I got to meet Chris Christie. Very excited with the benefit of the passage of time that I got to meet this man, Jesse Kurtz, who he's the focal point of tonight's get together. And he's a very interesting guy. There's lots of facets. But our friendship has developed over the course of the past decade plus. And I've seen him evolve like many young politicos, from a guy who, like me, was there as an activist, as a volunteer, passionate about what was happening in New Jersey and Atlantic County. And he was just coming out because he wanted to get involved. Since then, I think he's had like 60 kids. And he has run and gotten reelected in Atlantic City as the only Republican councilman in Atlantic City. And every time I bring this up or I write in a post, someone says to me, there's Republicans in Atlantic City and they've elected one of their own. And I correct them and I say, no, Jesse has been elected in Atlantic County by Republicans, by unaffiliateds, by Democrats, by this broad swath of voters who rally around this guy and love this guy and want them to represent him. And he accomplishes his goal without ever compromising who he is, which is an unapologetic family man, New Jersey guy, Atlantic City guy, and a conservative. So, Jesse, it's wonderful to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is a blast.
It's fun, isn't it?
I figured out how to work the share button, so it took me a moment. So Dan shouldn't feel too bad that it took him a moment to figure out.
Well, we've also done this like 10 weeks, though. So I appreciate you trying to make Dan feel better, but he should have it down by now.
Oh, man.
Jesse, I love your logo. I love the typeface. I love the colors. It's so vivid. How did you choose it? I mean, what is there any story behind it?
Sure. Yep. So, initially when I got into running my first campaign, and they tell you all the different things that you have to figure out, and you get overwhelmed very quickly with all the facets of a campaign. But it came down to, so what color are the signs going to be? And I remember folks saying, well, red's normally Republican and blue's normally Democrat, and you're a heavily Democrat area, so maybe you go blue, but then people might get confused or offended. And so folks I was around, they were arguing over blue and red and blue and red. And I remember thinking, like, I don't really like either one of those colors. I'm going with orange. That's what I'm doing. And they looked at me like, what? And I could tell Art with his hat, he likes orange. So I'm in good company. But no, I made the decision. I said, you know what, we're going to go orange and black. And with no disrespect to any of you folks up north, but they're Philadelphia Flyers colors. And hopefully I don't get a copyright infringement, because I insisted that the graphic folks find the exact shade of orange that is the Flyers orange from the logo. And that is something that I've kept with me. And it's not always been a successful color, but at this point, more often than not, it's been a winner. So we're sticking with orange and black.
Block letters. I love the block letters. They're like the kind of letters you would see on a football jersey or something. They're sort of evocative, sort of like of high school or something. But it's just so. This is one of my pet things. I hope will excuse me, but so many people have bad graphics and bad logos and bad signs. And that you got to be able to read something, like you're driving by or whatever. It's a lawn sign or whatever. But this is just so bold and vivid. I love it. It's one of the best I've seen.
Oh, cool. So this is you can rename this one, Matt. This is going to be Color Theory with Dan Cerrucci. It's going to be good. Very good.
Dan, do you have time for one more website?
I could do
Politics, Broadway, Color Theory.
Color Theory. Why not? I mean, I've always loved graphics, by the way. Yeah. So this is just one of the best I've seen. It's very distinctive. And it's very simple. Some people go with it. They got to put the American flag on there. They put a star on there. They put an eagle on there. There's a little wave on it, or something. But this is just like real basic, simple, and bold. You can't miss it. You can't miss it.
But see, that's the thing I like about it, because if you know Jesse, and we're gonna get into it a little bit this evening, he's a genuine guy. And he genuinely exudes optimism on a regular basis. And me and some other people that know him, and I've hung out with Jesse, not just politically but socially. We like the joke that he's like New Jersey's Jimmy Stewart, but not in like a naive Mr. Smith goes to Washington, gee shucks kind of way. Just in that he genuinely loves this country, loves his state, loves his hometown, loves his home county. He's excited about it and about the possibilities for it. And when I've talked to Jesse in the past, and there's many times that as a guy that covers New Jersey politics and pays property taxes in New Jersey, I feel like jumping off a bridge. Jesse's one of those guys who's like, oh, come on, man, I think that we're going to pull this out. I think there's hope for the future. We've had these conversations, have we not, Jesse?
Absolutely.
You've talked me down many times. So it's the fact that he's got this, I think you said it was almost like a high school football team font, Dan. It's very appropriate.
So you're saying like he's kind of like a hot dog or a cheerleader.
I was going to say like football quarterback, cheer captain, offensive line coach, all kind of rolled into one.
I've never been in this company that he hasn't been upbeat. I don't know what the hell the secret is.
Yeah, it's whatever it is, we got to bottom. We really do. And certainly, Jesse, so let's back up for a second. You've announced that you're running for the assembly. We put it up first on Save Jersey on Tuesday night. For those of you who are not super familiar with the legislative picture, Jesse is running for the Republican nomination for one of two assembly seats in LD2, the second legislative district, which is contained completely inside Atlantic County. Not all of Atlantic County is in LD2, but all of LD2 is in Atlantic County. And it includes Atlantic City, but it also includes a good swath of the county's suburban and exurban, almost kind of rural, some of them communities. So it's a very diverse county, and it's one of the only districts in the state that is a genuine swing district. The Assembly ticket came very close last time. It's got 2 Democrats currently filling the Assembly seats, but it also has Chris Brown, a Republican, serving as state senator. But in the past, in the recent past, we've had 2 Republican assemblymen and a Democrat state senator. So it's just one of those rare places in New Jersey where voters actually have a real choice. So Jesse's one of the candidates. And one of the reasons I think his optimism is going to be so important this year is we talk a lot on Save Jersey and on this Wednesday night chat with Art and Dan about how New Jersey has gotten its teeth kicked in by Phil Murphy's restrictions during the course of this coronavirus pandemic. But there is not a single other spot in New Jersey that's gotten hit as hard as Atlantic City and Atlantic County, has it, Jess? I mean, I think you talked about it in your press release announcing your candidacy. Massive job losses, the worst in the country in your backyard because of these restrictions, right?
It is. No, and it's a real sad shame. I have a friend who often says that when these negative, large-scale things happen to the country, they happen to Atlantic City or the Atlantic City area first. And, I hope that what has happened here does not become widespread. But what has happened is that in the midst of the effects of this virus, which in itself has been very tough on many people, the government restrictions on top, which have been unilateral restrictions, they've been restrictions from one person with an emergency extension after emergency extension, the real concentration of power that our founders would, roll in the grave to see today. But the thing that's really hurt us in Atlantic County area is that they've been one size fits all. They've been across the board without distinction, treating us the same way that a densely urban county like an Essex or a Hudson is treated, like a rural or a farming type area like Sussex or even Cumberland. The same way we're treated here. And as a result, highest year over year spike in unemployment in the country. And a big reason for that is we don't have an equivalent industry to the hospitality, gaming, and tourism industry that you can flip a switch and everybody can go grab a part-time job in that other industry, which happens to have a virtual option, whereas other areas have a diversity of industry. We're working on that. There are efforts to bring aviation to the area to grow around the tech center. But bottom line is you can't expect folks who work 2 or 3 service jobs in one or more of the casinos or restaurants or bars to, all of a sudden become a computer programmer or a financial analyst. It's not fair to their dignity as people. And the fact that
You mean they just can't go make solar panels like John Kerry told them to do when their jobs go away? Go figure.
No, and look, if there was ever a case for a variety or a flexibility on the regulations, Atlantic County is that case. If the regulation here were not the same as it were in Hudson or Essex County, we wouldn't be the highest year over year unemployment. It's that simple. It's not even that complicated on it. And the arrogance of power not to adjust those regulations after month and month and month of these horrible statistics, which each signify a family, a family crushed more and more. It's more confirmation of the arrogance of power and why going forward, we have to take steps to disperse that power, to put checks and balances and really stand up for our people by spreading that power out and really giving the legislature some more dignity.
It was a third of jobs lost, right? 34.2%. Wow. Between Q2 2019 and the second quarter of 2020.
It's staggering.
It's
almost not
massive.
Believable. I mean, it's like, if you didn't know it or you weren't close to it, you just say, Kurtz, he's exaggerating kind of thing. But it's literally like, I like the distinction of being the first boardwalk in the world. I like the distinction of having the first postcard. We even have the first bra burning instance, on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. We've got all these firsts that are neat to look at and everything.
Were you there for it?
In my day, no.
I do remember it. I do remember when it was connected to the Miss America pageant.
Oh, really? Was it?
Miss America pageant. Yeah, the feminists were protesting the Miss America pageant. That was when they first started protesting it, and they burned their bras there.
No shit. I gotta look that up.
We need a historical marker for that in town. I mean, I'm missing the boat on that one. I'm going to have to.
Yeah, you got to get that in before you join the assembly and leave council. That needs to be a high priority.
Yeah, put a monument at the location.
There should be one. There should be one. I think that's a bipartisan 60+% issue. Which, Jesse, you talked about Murphy's unilateral decisions and how harmful they've been for everywhere in New Jersey, but Atlantic County in particular. Did you find it as insulting as I did today when he came out and said, listen, everybody, great news. After a third of small businesses going under in 2020 across New Jersey, I'm going to raise capacity for indoor dining, not to 75%, not to 50%, but to 35%, which even some of the usual sycophants for Democrats and hardcore leftists like Murphy and the media who like to cover Democrats' keisters for this kind of stuff were kind of left scratching their head. How did he come up with 35%? Why not 40%? Why not 29%? Where did he come up with 35%? I mean, it's not just stupid, but it's also insulting, right? Because he isn't even trying to show us his math at this point. He's not even trying to pretend that there's what's the phrase he likes to use, Art? Data dictates dates.
Dates, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that fiction is now completely out the window, right?
Well, he would still insist upon it, and that's where the real arrogance is.
Yes.
It's it's his unilateral decisions, and it's not the way our country is formed, and it is undignified. But the real arrogance is that there's no transparency at all. In anything that he does, he won't release data for anything. He won't release he won't answer Oprah requests, and and this predates the pandemic. He wouldn't release the education funding formula. Tom's River in Ocean County is in court with some other towns who took massive cuts in their school funding because they said, well, that's what the formula is. Well, show us the formula. Nope, it's proprietary. How can something that's owned by a democratic government, which is the people, be proprietary? It's ours. So that's he's good with a smile and a nice demeanor, and that's getting him by. But he really is arrogant, and he's petty too. So we got to be careful about how you hit him. Make sure that you got your flank covered.
Well, on the capacity.
Yeah. I cut you off, Jess.
Oh, no, pardon me. On the capacity issue, the 35% is perplexing. Now, I'm not in the restaurant industry. I'm a technology person. But, I've made it a point because of how many restaurants there are and how important that is for my area. Really, the district, the state, we have great restaurants in New Jersey, and a lot of them, unfortunately, have closed their doors. When you close a restaurant, you can't just, boop, open it back up. Like, there's all sorts of capital costs. You lose your help to other places. You lose your cook, people leave. Like, it's very, very complicated. Well, the 35% is a head scratcher because I haven't seen really anything on it in any of the research. And if you go in a small place, which is really the place that needs this help, what do you tell a pizza place? All right, you can add another chair at this table. I mean, practically, I already know that my family's too big to go in some of these small pizzerias because of the dumb 25% cap. But it doesn't make any sense. I've been arguing for 50% and actually got a bipartisan resolution to come out of our city council on that. I did a website, dining50.com, just to try to bring attention to it. I know the restaurant associations want 66, but bottom line is, as the virus situation develops, people get better, because no restaurateur wants their customer to feel uncomfortable. So they find ways to upgrade the HVAC and to add plexiglass and to add other bells and whistles when it comes to health and safety to make the customers feel better. And this rigid 35% rule really extinguishes entrepreneurial spirit, human spirit, and I'm afraid that the longer it goes on, it's almost a death blow to large segments of our first-rate restaurant industry here in New Jersey.
The other thing it does is, which is, I guess, is a bit of a Jersey tradition in some respects. You know, it encourages beating the system. You know, the ones who are really at risk are establishments with liquor licenses, because that's a major investment. And if you loot, you know, and the state can come in and suspend your liquor license or take it away. But there's a lot of places around New Jersey that don't have liquor license that are not complying. And there's a lot of municipal governments that are looking the other way and just say, just make sure we don't get any complaints and don't let people get sick. So the, you know, it's like a speakeasy, which is, you know, going back to the good old days in Atlantic City. There's a lot of that happening, and it has been happening, you know, since, you know, really June last year. You know, once things started lifting after the first wave.
Right. And I mean, you know, none of us here are scientists.
Defied the governor, you know, and went public
Yeah.
and got on TV or, you know, on, you know, Facebook, he came to, you know, whether it be Jim's or the diner in Lacey or whatever, the governor came down on them real hard and continues to. But people, you know, places that just, you know, where Murphy eats or where, or, you know, or where they're friendly with the police or the mayors, you know, they're open.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, none of us here are scientists or doctors, but we can read, and it seems pretty conclusive at this point. I mean, look, in the early days of the crisis, Jess, and I'm sure you agreed back in March, even early April, we didn't really have a full grasp yet of what we were dealing with. But now we know that people generally get very sick and sometimes, rarely, thankfully, die from contracting this thing in two settings: nursing homes and small indoor gatherings in private dwellings. So the worst possible thing, it seems to me, that you could do, besides every single decision Phil Murphy's made related to nursing homes, is give people less places to go. You're much safer so long as you've got some reasonable safeguards in place going out to dinner at a large restaurant on a Friday night than you are sitting at home breathing and coughing on grandma. I mean, that's just common sense, right? But common sense seems so rare in Trenton these days. You know, Jesse, what's your read on Governor Murphy? You don't know him personally. I don't know the guy personally. I don't want to know the guy personally, unlike some of your future colleagues who brag about going to his house. I'm not going to name names. You can Google it. But do you think it's just arrogance that leads him to make these boneheaded decisions, or what exactly is going on with this guy?
Well, I mean, part of it is, I mean, there really is such a thing as human nature, and the way we set up our government has to protect against the negative tendencies that we all have, even the best of us. And so I think, like, if you take Phil Murphy and somebody who kind of represents almost like the technocratic element of society, somebody who's done very, very well for himself, and the type of business he had at Goldman Sachs is one that was like on a very large scale controlling the lives and destinies of many people. So you develop this type of, you know, like it's like the technocratic impulse, you know, you see things and I'm going to fix them. And in doing so, you push against all the safeguards of concentrating power in fewer and fewer hands. Because ultimately, like the way the government is set up with checks and balances is that, you know, you don't want one putz holding all the power. You want two or three with equal shares fighting with one another. Like you want three putzes, you know, or four putzes. Like that's what you want. Right. And it's done like that. I mean, this isn't like a really exciting topic for a lot of people, but like the institution matters. And one of my kind of bipartisan pitches will be, if the voters in this area give me the opportunity to go to the assembly, is that, I want to talk to some of my colleagues, get them in a frank moment and say, look, you've spent a lot of time and energy to get to where you are. You've been in the legislature 2 years, 20 years, whatever it is. Like, you need to have some more self-respect. Like, we need to stand up for ourselves as a legislature, because ultimately, especially at the assembly level, you're the closest to the people when it comes to state government. It's when the legislature is disrespected as an institution, you're disrespecting the citizens of New Jersey. Because in some respects, even in a minority position, whether it's South Jersey compared to North Jersey, Republican compared to Democrat, that voice, even if you don't win a vote on it, for some people is the only opportunity that your constituents that work hard as they can to make it has to be a part of this larger technocratic, ever-growing technocratic conversation. And that's essential. Like, and for some it may seem like it's academic, but for me, it's absolutely essential for the people I see, rummaging through trash areas and abandoned casinos because they can't have enough food to get through, where we have a major news story in the Atlantic City area. It's not the opening of a business in the last year. It's been food drives and how long the line is for them. It's necessary help, but it's all the result, I would argue, in taking a bad situation, the virus, and making it worse with top down, no nuance, one person controlling them, heavy-handed executive orders, emergency, 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 almost never-ending emergency.
I love the way Jesse phrases this. I mean, I just love it, Jesse, the way you put it, contextualize it, and saying that the members of the legislature have to stand up and confront this situation if they're going to have any self-respect. I love that he used that. I would just say, Jesus, go in there and fight like hell, show some teeth, because this is what I've been wanting from the Republicans in the legislature. For God's sake, show some teeth. But, Jesse, being the more mild-mannered and reasonable person that he is, says, and he makes a very good point. If you don't make these arguments and stand up for the people that you directly represent at the local level, you're so much more closer to them than the governor and these bureaucrats in the state bureaucracy. If you don't do that, you're disrespecting the legislature itself, and you are trivializing it. You're diminishing your importance. And so there it is. It's very simple. I love it, Jesse.
Cool. Yeah, I told you he's the real deal. I've been saying it.
Well, I want to throw a little addendum on there. And you had asked me earlier on what the feedback's been on things, and it's been good. It's been pretty exciting. But
your phone's been bringing off the hook all day, I'm sure.
I still have plenty of time to help out with putting dishes away and doing the real work that needs to be done.
Because and let's not gloss over this point, because people need to know this, and then I'll shut up and let you finish your thought. I joked before about you having 60 kids. I wasn't really that far off. You have 7 now.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes.
I counted in the Christmas card. My wife actually counted. She's like, hold on a second. Jesse has 7 kids. I said, yes, he's got 7 kids. And he still finds time to do everything that he does and do it well.
Well,
I've got one toddler, and I feel like I'm walking into walls all damn day.
Well, we're good believers in our household, and we do know that it may not be the true miracle of Christmas, but the secondary miracle of Christmas at the Kurtz household is getting one picture that everyone is smiling at. And we normally accomplish the secondary miracle of Christmas each year, but it's tough. It's a tough.
So if you can get all those kids to smile for a Christmas card, then maybe you are the guy to get Republicans to collectively display a little bit of grit and trend. What better qualification?
I'd love to give it a shot. It would be cool. But what I was starting to share is that So one of the bits of feedback that people have mentioned is that, like, unlike some of the other folks, that there'll be an opportunity to consider here in the district. I only represent a ward in one town.
Mhm.
And one of the things that, not every town has a ward system, but one of the ways that I've really grown to love the ward system is that in some respects, it mimics what I was describing with the legislature, is that, you boil it down to a smaller area and you're accountable for that area. And what you have to do is you have to find a way in a larger context where there's a lot of things that are outside of your control to be absolutely accountable in a way that a bureaucrat, whether they be a director of public works or planning and development or human resources or whatever it is at the local level, or a cabinet level person, a secretary at the state level, will never be accountable. And that type of lesson in representation, I think, is essential for doing a good job, at least wanting to put forth the best effort in terms of being a representative. Because one of the things that is going to be important, I believe, that, it's the bills mean everything. And I'm going to read the bills. I'm somebody on council. I've developed a reputation. I read the ordinances. I read the resolutions. I demand more backup information and supporting info. That stuff's important. But the other side of it is doing constituent services and being proactive in finding your stakeholders. And so using some of these models developed at the local level in the ward, I actually would like to do that across the district, and have like a district day for each of the towns in the district where we're proactively scheduling with folks in each of the 17 towns to come in who are elected officials, who are business leaders, who are religious leaders, and just concerned citizens, to come in proactively and say, hey, what's going on? What are your issues? How can we do better? And I think armed with that info on the fly, I'll be better able to make their case in Trenton, to try to amend bills where I can, to sign on as co-sponsors where I'll be allowed, et cetera. But it's really those type of like fundamental political lessons that you don't get if you're not in a town that's broken up with wards. And certainly the ward system in an urban area where I represent takes it to a whole nother level. I mean, you could phone it in, but your people are going to know you phoned it in, and you're done. I mean, you're done after, if you snuck in that one term, you're done after that point.
And not to go off on a tangent, but they actually tried to change that system in Atlantic City, that form of government, not all that long ago. And you supported the current system for a few different reasons, but in particular for this reason, that you felt like it kept you and your colleagues directly accountable to the people in your neighborhood, the people you have to pass on your way to work or to drop your kids off at school.
Absolutely. And that's, there's merits to not having a ward system in some areas, but I think that when you deal with, a densely populated area, if you're looking at a place where you need more accountability, that whole having wards is something that, it actually works. It's something that it works. And sometimes people point out what's bad about it. And it's like, well, look, if you changed it, you're going to take what's bad and you're going to make it worse, because you're removing the few safeguards that like protect the concentration of power and the complete abolition of accountability.
So, we're talking about your ward, which is the 6th ward in Atlantic City. I don't want to downplay the significance of the fact that you are the only Republican on Atlantic City Council. And I think after listening to you now for about 35, 45 minutes, there are a lot of people watching this video that are going to describe you, as I have in a tongue-in-cheek way, as a unicorn, because you're this young millennial conservative in a diverse urban center who has not only been elected to council, but reelected by a landslide margin. I think it was 70%. I only remember what it was before they finished counting all the absentees. I don't know if it stayed or dipped, but it was a landslide, right?
And it got down to 68, but it was pretty good. And
68. Yeah, it's still better than a kick in the rear, right? It was massive. So, a lot of Republicans are going to watch this video from different parts of New Jersey. They're going to say, how the hell is this possible? Jesse should not exist. So I know it's a massive question. So I'm going to ask you, because I think it's important, not just for your race, and why I personally think you're a fantastic choice for the assembly. But for the benefit of Republicans elsewhere who are trying to win in blue or purple territory, how the hell did you do it?
Well, part of it was kind of a dream that was instilled when I was very little to be involved in local government, and parents talking to me about it. But practically speaking, I've noticed sometimes with conservatives, I mean, not present company, because the three of you put a tremendous amount of work into your advocacy and your belief in your principles. But the same cannot be said of everyone who shares the conservative mindset. And there's also often this dichotomy between people who are very principled, but just don't want to do work. They're above licking an envelope. Not that people lick envelopes as much anymore, but you get the point. Addressing an envelope, doing text banking, phone calls. And for me, I've never been averse to the work piece of it. I genuinely like people. So even if it's a sense of my district is 3-1 Democrat to Republican. So it's not that it's a Republican oasis in Atlantic City. No, we're pretty heavily Democrat here too. But I think by really reflecting on one's principles and putting together an agenda that is something substantive and an alternative, and being genuine about it, I do think that can resonate in a lot of places. And what I've done is, I've tried to show how a different set of beliefs can bring about a different and better outcome here in Atlantic City, that the first answer for the problem shouldn't be government, whether that's a grant through the community development block grant from the federal level, whether it's something at the state level, and if only we got a state entity here, or some county assistance or something. No, at some point there's a role for government, but the first idea, in my opinion, should be to offer a way to take the natural hardworking nature of folks, such as newer immigrants to the country, such as people who are small business owners, and to find a way to free up more time and resources for them to pursue their dreams, as opposed to trying to comply with government mandates and pay ever increasing costs for some type of blob called government, which is often not even something that you bump into, to your point earlier. It's something that's off in some far land called Trenton. It's something that's off at the county seat, if it's at the county level, or some state authority that who knows where, the Garden State Parkway Authority headquarters is. And it's certainly not in between my drive to work and my drive to the supermarket. So I think that through being focused, offering an alternative, for some people, it's not the natural inclination, right? Because there is this reliance on kind of government that tends to be prevalent in areas like Atlantic City, for that matter. But being persistent on that one, I think that is a roadmap, because we've got great people everywhere. In our cities, in our strongholds of the Democrat Party, we've got great people everywhere, and it's not that you speak in a different language, but you find a way to express those principles of self-reliance, respect for the family, respect for spiritual expression and faith, and you find a way to translate that into concepts and ways that people can understand, and they get it. And I think one of the examples of this was the Super Bowl issue. And I have to give a shout out to Senator Bucco up north, or Bucco. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm not Italian, so I'll throw that out there. I don't, but I love my Italian friends out there. He was the first person I saw trying to make this push to get rid of the arbitrary curfew of 10 o'clock on Super Bowl Sunday. And so, I latched on to that and got city council to pass a unanimous resolution calling on the governor to get rid of the curfew on Super Bowl Sunday. Well, the example, common sense wise, was, why would you have a curfew that throws people out of your bar or restaurant with 2 minutes to go in the Super Bowl? Nobody wants to do that. No Democrat wants to do that. No Republican wants to do that. And thank goodness he changed his rule. But I was just shy of releasing a cartoon that was going to have people huddling around a window, shivering in the cold, trying to peek at each other, spreading COVID on one another, breathing, trying to catch the last couple minutes of the game. Why? Because that's practical. That's what would have happened. And when you break it down on that one, then draw the lesson piece. It's this happened because you have this arbitrary decree that takes into account nothing. You don't even like football, and it's going to be Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
And you may like the wings, or you like the dip at your gathering or something. Like there's something you like. You like the commercials, you like the new uniforms, like whatever that is that non-football folks like about Super Bowl Sunday. Everybody gets it. Super Bowl Sunday coming up, it seemed, except for the governor, except for people that were too concentrated in the power and then the arrogance that comes along with that power when it's vested in one person without that check and balance.
I don't think Murphy's a football guy. Maybe water polo or racquetball. I don't think he's tough enough to actually play
Little
either.
soccer.
Well, right. I mean, well, I don't know. Has he ever actually gone and visit his female soccer team?
I don't know. I suspect he has.
He didn't treat him very well.
No. But hey, Jess, now in your district, there's 3 candidates right now for the Republican nomination for 2 spots. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then the incumbent senator, Senator Brown, I read he hasn't decided yet if he's running for re-election. Is that true?
You know, I listened to an interview recently with him, and acknowledgement, shout out to Harry Hurley. It was on his show, and the senator seemed to be pointing out that he's got to figure out that decision. So at this point, seems like he's figuring it out. I mean, I would hope that he runs. He's a very, popular senator in our area, popular elected official. I think that if he were to run, he would be the odds-on favorite to keep that seat. And it also would help, myself and whoever else, God willing, gets on that ticket at the assembly level. But no, to answer your question directly, Art, at this point, we're waiting for him to make that announcement.
Well, in the unfortunate event that I agree with you, I would like to see him run for re-election. And I respect the fact that he's taken his time. I think he takes his job really seriously, like you do. And I think he's been frustrated by some of the other people in the caucus, maybe, and how they've treated him when he's voted against the grain. But if he were not to run, would you step up and run for Senate instead of Assembly?
I don't think so, Art. I put a lot of thought into kind of, this is going back like a year plus, and I asked a lot of people whose opinion, I valued, and then to put it out there. I mean, Matt is one of the people that I asked about this, a while back. And so I've kind of sized up, and I see in my mind where the assembly in particular is a natural extension of my representation as a ward councilman in Atlantic City, where I've grappled with state mandates, the idea that you have very few limits of folks like sex offenders or parolees or mental health housing, the ability to limit that at the local level, all these dynamics that cities, especially my town, struggle with. So the assembly piece makes sense.
Level, couldn't you make the same argument for the Senate? Because the Senate, you're basically serving the same district, unlike on the federal level where senators cover a whole state and congressmen cover, a district of the state. It's the second district, you and hopefully Senator Brown, but if it's not Senator Brown, it's the same district, just like you've got the ward. So I understand, your analogy between the ward and the district, but I think your reasoning between the 2 offices is faulty.
Okay, and that's fair. I guess it may even be more of the heart, or just getting set on something. We're stubborn when we set our minds to things. It's something I've been trying to work on kind of slowly and methodically, and and I like the idea of. I just like the idea of moving towards the assembly at this point. And, again, I hope that Chris Brown runs for Senate, but in the event he doesn't, I think I would stick with try to be one of the 2 for assembly at this point.
Okay.
I'll tell you what selfishly I like about Jesse running for the assembly. And I guess maybe selfishly is the wrong way to put it, because my reasoning I think is better for everybody. I think that's the caucus that a conservative who's articulate and principled and not afraid to throw down, for lack of a better way to put it, like Jesse, can have the bigger immediate impact. Up at the other end of the Garden State Parkway right now, so we're moving considerably north. in LD21. Tom Kaine's not running for re-election at the state Senate. He's going to try to take another crack at Tom Malinowski next year for Congress. And John Bramnick is probably, well, he's not probably, he's definitely running for state Senate. And he might be a slight favorite for that seat. I don't know. It might be a toss-up depending who the Democrats run. My point is that both leadership positions, the Senate minority leader and the Republican minority leader in the Assembly, are now going to be open. And I'm not suggesting that Jesse's going to, win his seat, get promoted to minority leader. But the point is there is going to be a leadership void in both chambers. I would personally argue there's already a leadership void, at least in the Assembly. So I think somebody like Jesse jumping into that pool, there's a couple other conservatives in that caucus, people who, for lack of a less crass way to say it, don't suck, who Jesse can immediately work with and begin to kind of maybe do what Jesse talked about at the beginning of tonight's live, which is encourage Republicans to begin to have a little confidence and self-respect again. The Senate, you're dealing with all those old lions. You've got a lot of big personalities, including our buddy Declan O'Scanlan Art. Not that I'm saying Jesse's not a formidable guy, but I think that that's a harder nut to crack in the Senate. And I think that the body that's the closest to the people, that's where the real leadership void is. And I think that I could see Jesse becoming an immediate leader there, if not by title, kind of in like an ideological, spiritual way.
Yeah, I suspect Jesse will be much like Senator Brown. He's just been one term. Is that correct? Am I right about that?
Brown's been reelected.
He has been reelected.
Yeah. He won, and then he beat Mazzeo.
Got it. Okay.
Right, Jess? Am I getting that?
He beat Colin Bell in the last one. Yep.
Correct. Yeah, he beat Mazzeo, and then he beat Colin Bell. Right. I almost forgot about Colin Bell. He's that forgettable.
Well, I think Jesse's going to be a leader wherever he goes. And if the Assembly's it, the Assembly's it. But I think that you're going to need a strong vote getter on top of that ticket to, and I think to one retain control of the seat, and hopefully win 2 more seats in the Assembly. So I'm going to take the segue that you offered, Matt, in terms of the leadership void. We're in a very unfortunate situation now, where we've got the minority leadership, and actually we got the minority leader of the Senate, the minority leader of the Assembly, and our state chairman are all temporary figures. The state chairman will probably be resolved in June, although it should be resolved sooner. But I've got a problem with the fact that you've got Tom Kaine not running for re-election, and he's maintaining the minority leadership and in an election year, the minority leader's biggest role, most important role, is candidate recruitment, fundraising, and making sure the candidates get elected. And the same you've got in the Assembly. You've now got the Assembly minority leader not running for Assembly, but he's going to be raising the money, and he's going to be in a competitive race himself. And they've both indicated that they're holding on to their leadership offices until their end of the term. And you're not, the people in the caucuses will speak behind their back to each other, but not to them to say step down. What I'm saying, you guys should step down from your leadership roles, and pick someone who is in a safe seat, relatively safe seat, so they don't have to worry about their own reelection, and who can raise a ton of money and can lead the caucus to victory in both houses.
You want interim leaders to replace the current interim leaders.
I want the team captains to be on the team when the team is determined. Right now they're on they're going to have senioritis. They're running for different offices. So I think it really makes sense for a leadership change now. And I can't believe I'm the only one who said this so far.
It's not that it's an unimportant point. I see the merit of it. I guess my perspective is probably colored in part from that chip I have on my shoulder that's called being a South Jersey Republican. And even when we had our leadership fully engaged, Tom Kane, to his credit, has come down here in the past and tried to kick butt. I mean, John Bramnick, I don't know when the hell the last time I saw him in South Jersey. The LD2 guys last time came so close to winning, and they did it with like no money. So I get your point, but my point is when they were fully engaged in the assembly races, a whole lot of cash wasn't necessarily flowing down here anyway. And money's the most important thing.
All the more reason that we should make a change.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And Tom on the Senate side has demonstrated that, he's a fighter statewide. And he even went up against Christie when he was governor and tried to win Steve Sweeney's seat, and then Christie turned on him.
Oh God, remember that?
And if I think if Tom, I'm more comfortable with Tom staying in and doing the job than I am with Bramnick, staying and running for a different office, and it's going to be a very competitive race. He's going to have to raise a lot of money for his own race.
So who do you like for assembly leader, Art?
I'm not sure. I think it should be somebody else. We've had enough Union County, one district representation for a long time. Someone from Monmouth or Ocean County, I'd be happy with. Maybe Ned Thompson. I know Rob Clifton has been talked about, but I don't know that he's a political animal enough. And from Monmouth County, if you go up north, maybe a guy like Brian Bergen, he's a freshman, but he's a whippersnapper. And not necessarily from policy, but from somebody who wants to win and is willing to lead the state caucus to winning, and somebody who can be Jack Chiarelli's partner in recruiting great candidates, helping them raise money, teaching them how to raise money, and getting out there and talking to Jesse and finding out how to win in Democratic areas.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think the point was well taken, Matt, about these legislative leaders not coming to South Jersey enough. My goodness, the Republican Party in this state could learn a lot from what's happening in these southernmost New Jersey counties, because in my mind, that's where the revitalization of the Republican Party in New Jersey is occurring, with new, young, fresh faces stepping forward. You've got some very, very active Republican clubs down there. You've got a real community, a sense of, as I see it, community spirit. You've got a strong sense of Republican values in some of these areas. I'm talking about Cape May County, Atlantic County, Cumberland County. Come on down, because this is where, in my mind, the Republican Party in New Jersey is going to be, or is being reborn. I mean, this is what I see. Am I crazy?
I think
you're crazy, but not for this. You're right about this, 100%.
I think the party should be led from leaders from the area where they're winning against the odds.
Right.
And certainly LD2 is an example of that. Monmouth County is a great example of that. We have since 2008 been a majority Democratic registration county, and we've maintained control of the county, and three of our four legislative districts since then. The Monmouth County Republican organization knows how to win, and knows how to get the other side not even to fight, because they've been beaten so bad. And I'm proud to have been part of that. But we need to find out where what we're doing is working and duplicate it, instead of looking for the good old boys and seniority and who we're going to offend or not offend, which our party has been guilty of for the last 30 years that I've been involved.
Which is one of the things, candidly, I love about what Jesse's tried to do, because in between partnering with his wife to raise 7 kids and having a career and serving on Atlantic City Council and all the other things that he does, he has found the time to host this annual leadership brunch. And when you hear leadership brunch, it may sound a little stale. You imagine a bunch of blue hairs sitting around eating overcooked eggs, listening to someone who's as old as they am just preach to them about, who they should vote for that November. It's much more dynamic than that. Jesse formed this leadership brunch as kind of a breakout event from the League of Municipalities every year in Atlantic City. I don't like the League of Municipalities. It reminds me of that scene in Animal Farm where all the pigs get together, and dress like humans, and the other animals catch them, eating apples and living the good life.
My mind went to Animal House when you said animal, and it reminds me of Animal House.
Right, exactly. And you can read some articles online about exactly how frat-like it got. But I love Jesse's event. It's off-site. The first year you hosted it, Jess, you and I got together and you said, Matt, help me put together a list. And I said, that's a great idea. And I gave you some names and you came up with some names and some other people gave you names. And I want to say maybe the first year there was a dozen people, maybe a dozen and a half. And over the course of the last few years, it's grown. And this year, you had the maximum capacity we were allowed to have at that restaurant per COVID regulations. And there was a waiting list that couldn't get in. And we're not talking about, just random activists from various parts of the state. Jack Ciattarelli was there. You had members of the legislature there. You had mayors. And it was a broad spectrum of not just elected officials, but there were Republicans from all different backgrounds, including numerous African-American Republicans. And it was a morning where we just got together and talked to each other about exactly what Art's talking about, how to win, what we're doing wrong, what we can be doing better, and the importance of courageous advocacy. So, it's funny when Jesse announced today, obviously a lot of people in his district and in his hometown are excited, but you've got all these mayors. Like I just saw online, Art, being the Monmouth guy you are, Mayor Tony Perry up in Middletown, tweeting support for Jesse. That's the kind of leader he's been, and he hasn't even set foot in the assembly yet. So that in of itself is, I think it speaks great to you, Jesse. You're already trying to begin this conversation.
Oh, thank you. It's actually been a lot of fun. I call the league, so I'm definitely taking a little bit of a different angle, and maybe it's because I appreciate all the business that they generate in the cold of winter here in my town. But I refer to it as like political Disneyland. It's something where you go, you see all these people you read about in great places like Save Jersey, you put names to faces. And, I'm still at that point where I genuinely like being involved, even after a tough meeting or a tough back and forth on a race or an issue. I love it. I just think it's a lot of fun. Meet great people doing it.
You live there and you can go home to your, and to your family, everybody else. The animal house stuff starts after you've gone home, Jesse.
Right. It makes sense. Yeah. I try to avoid that. I know that side exists. I just don't pay much
Jesse just wants them to pay their bills. He wants them to pay their bills, behave themselves, and pay their room bill, and pay their
and tip
liquor
well.
and their food bill, and tip our great servers in Atlantic City.
Yeah, but out of that, I realized that just about every event that I was either invited to or attended was run by, if not a Democrat elected official, an interest group, and so I was like, what? This would be an easy way to carve out a niche. Let's have an event for Republicans. let's do something. But in particular, highlight folks who are in the younger demographic and are showing leadership. And we've built up, and thank you for always being a good heads up of talent and people around the state that I wouldn't necessarily brush shoulders with on a regular basis, but through the event, we've made friends and exchanged ideas with a lot of just great people from around the state. And I think that whole idea that we're not and we should not be crabs in a bucket, we shouldn't be people that are tearing one another down. It sounds kind of cheesy, but when I was coming up, in this, even I'm a younger fella, I realized I've been doing this for a little while. It hasn't always been affirmative and collaborative with people's first inclination to support. It has resembled more of that crabs in a bucket motif. And to the extent that, whatever modicum of leadership I have right now, that's what I want to put forth, because I think that, whether it's me or anybody, you're stronger when you're collaborating and pushing forward the team in a good way, and pushing forward others and working with them. And again, that's cheesy, but it's true. And if we have that, if we're going to be in the minority right now, the only way that we are effective is we have to work together. We have to take some bold strokes, not necessarily lash out all the time. Like, we have to be strategic about it, but we've got to build up a trust with one another. We have to build up a camaraderie, and that way, when the issue, when we figure out what that issue is, whether it's the situation of the crushing debt burden, whether it's we're going to strike at reining back in the gas tax, like whatever that issue is going to be, where we start peeling back some of the mess and this momentum that is driving young people when they graduate one of our colleges to move elsewhere, and driving the retiree to another state. That momentum has to be stopped. And I believe that we can do it. And it's about being that strategic. Let's put up a few roadblocks. And then the minute you get that door open, I think it's over. And to be honest, is to spill our strategy to the whole world. I think the effort that you, myself, others have done to get the governor to roll back the arbitrary curfew of 10 p.m. gets the foot in the door. And it starts showing the complete arbitrary, non-scientific nature of some of these regulations. Some people are not big fans of incrementalism, but when you're in a position of relative weakness politically, we've got to get the foot in the door just to show that, look, COVID was not eradicated after 10 o'clock. It just wasn't. And it's not eradicated after midnight. We need to be the people, not necessarily the party, but the people of responsibility and common sense, that we're going to exercise a degree of caution and care for ourselves and one another 24 hours a day. And
that's the key, is individual responsibility. And that's where our leadership should be using their belief power to encourage people to be careful, and to be responsible. But there's no evidence that any of these lockdowns or restrictions have made any difference at all. If you look at, compare it to, different states that have different things, the virus is doing what the virus is doing. And, I being of a, older, a little bit of an older age than you guys, and having some, comorbidities, I've been extraordinarily careful. I don't go to events, and I don't go out much until, I get my second shot, and then I'll be more careful. But and
it's part of the reason we came up with this weekly talk. It was a chance for us to be able to get together.
Yeah. So and there are a lot of people like that. And people are responsible, and people are careful. You don't have to tell them what to do. There's no evidence that destroying the restaurant industry last summer made any difference at all. The virus went down anyway, and it was going up elsewhere in the country. If Murphy's got science that says differently, show us. But he doesn't. His explanation is, well, there was an outbreak in China, or Korea, so we're keeping, where there was a crowded dining room, so we're shutting it down. No, it's, and we're paying $35 million to McKinsey to have these, make up these reasons.
I mean, when you come right down to it, what is more Republican than personal responsibility, than individual?
Exactly right.
What's more Republican than that? Okay, and it's just very basic. I think the problem is that the message has not been articulated properly, and this is
It's a very difficult message to deliver, because people are legitimately scared. And we saw that with President Trump. He tried to be an optimist, and he tried to negotiate with the virus. It didn't work. And people were not happy. And he ended up scaring people more.
Yeah.
And
I like that. He tried to negotiate with the virus. Donald Trump thinks he could negotiate anything with anybody. He even thought he could negotiate with a virus.
A lifetime in New York real estate will give you that kind of confidence, I guess, right?
So and that's one of the things that's difficult as a political messenger in this environment, is people are genuinely scared, and they've got a leader who's being patriarchal and calling them knuckleheads and worse, and and saying, stay home and you're bad, and then come down really hard on the gym owners in South Jersey, who are defiant. And they could have just opened their gym, and if they didn't go on Fox News, they would have been okay. But what they were looking to make a political statement, I'm sure. But it's a difficult political environment in a crisis, and we're going to see Murphy, Murphy opening it up, for a little bit now. I'm surprised he didn't open up more, because he's going to open up more and more and more and start making people happy as he gets closer and closer to election. He's been hoarding billions of dollars of CARES Act money so he can start doling it out in July, August, and September to businesses. So, people are going to be happy to get it. So how do you message it to say, well, yeah, but he should have given it to you last year? And then, well, I'm so happy to get it now. He's such a nice man. Vote for him again. That's one of the challenges that Jack Ciattarelli's going to have, and he's doing a good job, a better job now that he's the presumptive nominee, hammering Murphy on his competence. And that's the other place that we have to hammer him is, from unemployment is breaking down again. And
unemployment's breaking down, and there's also aspects of the damage that Phil Murphy has wrought in this state that can't be fixed by dispersing some cash, right? Those 8,000 and counting nursing home casualties, those people, he can't raise them from the dead. No amount of CARES Act money can bring them back. Those businesses that have died, and this, you're a businessman, and we've talked about this before, it's one thing to be able to run a business that your grandfather, your great-grandfather started. It's another thing to resuscitate it when it's been killed. And we've lost a third of our small businesses in this state. I'm sure many of them are in LD2. So I think an articulate messenger like Jesse, and Jesse, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think you have to zero in on these atrocities, because no matter how much sunshine Phil Murphy sprinkles around come August, September, and October, when people are really zero in on these races, he can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, can he? The damage is done.
I think there is this dichotomy, and it's been my explanation as to why his popularity is so high, at least per the polls that are coming out. And I think it has to do with his mannerism and his personality just comes off fundamentally without paying any attention to what he says or what the policies are. Just think it comes out pretty all right. You have a sense of confidence that okay, he's doing this. Somebody told me he took theater classes previously, and if that's the case, that it's evident that he has a sense of presence in these meetings, that if you compare him to Corzine, Corzine had none of that. Corzine was as awkward as you get kind of thing. He's like Lurch, what he's doing. But I think the challenge is connecting, and Jack Ciattarelli is the guy to do this. It's connecting the devastating impact of the policies to this charming, pseudo-charming, folksy type guy with presence. And that's what the campaign is. And I do feel confident that our nominee will do that. In the larger context of policy, I want to throw one more thing out there, and that is one of the victims of this whole remote learning situation has been the children without intact, stable families for whom the educational system is that extra set of eyes each day to look for neglect or abuse. And that whole notion of just abuse on a large scale, we're starting to see stories here and there of young people turning to suicide, and that's sparking districts to return to at least a hybrid model, if not all in person. And there's really some truth to that. And I say that as somebody who was homeschooled, so I was homeschooled. And when you have the intact family who's able to make a choice that reflects their situation, personal responsibility, we were mentioning before, it's a great option. But when you have children that are vulnerable, that don't have that intact support system, not that that's the primary reason for education, but that's one of the things that our course of life has done. And so in the absence of that, by ceding to these demands that there be no in-person education in especially vulnerable districts. You know, I look at that in my district, especially like the school districts that have gone mainly remote tend to be the areas with less involved parents, less present parents to kind of push back on the push for there not to be in person. If you're going to pull the school away, then like there needs to be some other type of system to check in on these kids, or otherwise you end up what happened on my street, you know, early on in this situation. All the kids are doing school from home, which means they knock on my door, you know, at 9 a.m. asking to play with our kids each day. And we say, no, we're doing school. They're like, oh yeah, we're doing that too. We did it already. It's like, you know, and then you find out that like they're not doing the school. The parent, if there is one, is at work. And so it just created this whole situation where I don't think it's an exaggeration to say there will be the lost, not a generation, but maybe the year, maybe the couple years that results from this. And yeah, it's something where it's sad. Like it's sad first and foremost. And I think if our policy could be one of, I find if there's not going to be school, then some type of resiliency center where the vulnerable kids have a structured environment to do the remote learning or something along those lines.
Let's see the science where we shouldn't have in-person school. I like
there you go.
Science.
But how about school choice?
The governor's been very shrewd. It's one area where, you know, he is beholden to the teachers union. I think a lot of the teachers would be fine going to school. But it's one area where perhaps he shouldn't have, but has given the districts the choices. So that's one area to push it down to the district. So you can't blame me, you can't blame the governor for how the schools are being run or not run, except he's got the authority to say open the schools. Whereas I really think he should have been pushing the control, you know, using our county and municipal governments for what they're designed to do, for managing the crisis and determining which businesses should open at what level or not, and you know how many people can gather, because it's different in Atlantic County than it is in Cumberland County, than it is in Bergen County, than it is in Monmouth County. And you know the people who are close should be making those decisions. But he's maintained that tight control one side, except for education, because that's a tough issue for, you know, because parents are really, really upset from what I'm hearing. It's not just the vulnerable, you know, the stable families where both parents are active, you know, are angry, you know, that well, my kids are not going to school, you know, and they're sending their kids to, you know, religious or private or secular private school that are remaining open.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a boon for Catholic schools. And that's why one of the things that's frustrated me as a conservative is this has been a golden opportunity, not only to hit on the angles you gentlemen are talking about, but we used to be the party of school choice. Why aren't we talking about it?
Exactly.
And remember, I say this, you guys know this, but not all of our listeners know this. I'm a Camden County guy. So I live in the bluest county of all, along with Dan. And I know so many woke suburban moms who were members of the Orange Man Bad cult this past November, who hate Phil Murphy and are so pissed off over this schooling situation. And guess what? Some of them that are economically fortunate enough have made the decision, if they could get through the waiting list, to put their kid in a Catholic school. So why aren't we having the confidence to make this argument? I mean, I can tell you what it is, because I've spoken to legislators and some members of their staff, and what they'll tell you is they're all terrified of pissing off teachers, which I think you just raised the point, Art. The teacher opinion is much more divided than the NJA would have you believe. Jesse, how do you thread this needle?
Teachers, they're afraid of the NJEA throwing a bunch of money at them.
Which Chris Christie, I thought, it settled this question, right? Yeah, they're going to throw money at you, but you tell the teachers, listen, I'm going to speak directly to you. I'm going to negotiate directly with you. I'm going to campaign and engage in a conversation directly with you. Your union can go to the hell, because guess what? Your union's not doing too much for you right now.
Yeah, but Christie took the Republican spine with him when he left the stage.
Yeah, along with some other things, but...
Yep.
No, I mean, one of the things, whether it's the position of lockdowns or restrictions or capacities, it is something that should be determined at more of a regional level. And when it comes to like the schooling situation, we have to distinguish between intact families who are in a position to have one or both parents kind of sacrifice financially to spend more time with the children in general, but especially during this time of the virus, where they may have a child that is more vulnerable, or they may want their kids to see their grandparents more frequently, so they don't want them exposed to germs and such. And so our policy should distinguish that and acknowledge, whether it's through a tax credit or through some type of benefit to assist with that, in order to establish families to flourish during a time of the virus. And so that's like the policy on the side of intact families. And then the policy on the side of the children who are vulnerable that I was alluding to earlier, which are a real deal and don't have enough advocates for them at this moment. They need something akin to in-person instruction, or if not that, it's something like a resiliency center, and it's done elsewhere. But for the same reason why it's justified to have public education for all children 6 through 16, this is a time where that type of resiliency has to be addressed. And I think that it's having that variation that addresses real world situations for people in real districts, and speaking forth what that solution is at a district level. That's the answer going forward. And what I'm alluding to that works in my district, and what you're alluding to that might work in your area, whether it's Camden or Monmouth, is actually different than the way it would look in Sussex or Essex. And
Right.
so in that sense,
Right.
the ability to work with folks across the aisle, so to speak, but to say, hey, wouldn't you like an educational policy and funding situation that works best for your area? I would too. And I'd like one that works best for my area as well and for my people. And I think approaching the issue in that way, there's at least the potential for common ground, common cause, and to like work through a situation that empowers individuals, that strengthens families. And then ultimately, the crazy thing is, all the research I've ever done suggests that when you have that more personalized approach to policy, it ends up costing taxpayers less, because people fundamentally who are primary educators of their kids are able to do more, the same way that people who love their area, love their street, love their neighborhood, love their city more than anybody, more than any type of employee, whether that's a government employee or a private employee. When you're empowered to do something on your own because you have the time and you have the resources, and less of that's being taken away from you to pay for government, that's a winning formula.
I do think a golden opportunity has been lost to advocate for school choice, though, and certainly the Republicans should have jumped right on that. It is so many people have allowed themselves to be so paralyzed by this COVID, by this crisis, that they, of course, we all know the famous phrase, crisis brings opportunity, and nobody knows that better than the Democrats. They invented it, okay? But I don't know. I think a tremendous opportunity has been lost here. And
I don't think it's been lost. I
advocate for school
think
choice.
it's before us, Dan, and I would like to see the Republican leadership, recruit strong candidates in Camden County and in swing districts and in Essex County and Hudson County. And, let's go into that's going to be a popular issue in the African-American school districts. Let's pick some people off in Essex County. Wouldn't that be something? But, the Republicans, they roll their eyes and say, that's too hard, or that's going to cost too much. It's not going to work anyway. Let's just hold on to what we got. Oh, we only lost 2 seats. Well, I still got my lobbying contract.
Well, and the dirty little secret too, right, is that we know that historically there's been a lot of support in urban centers among non-traditional Republican voters for school choice. It's actually been suburban parents, many who live in affluent areas, who've traditionally said, well, my school's pretty good, so that doesn't sound too enticing to me. But this pandemic's an opportunity to point out, I think Jesse articulated it very well, that there are serious systemic flaws in how we fund education, how we think about education, how we structure our educational system. And one of the things I love about what Jesse does, and he doesn't say it to be a politician or to be manipulated. He says it because it's true, and he gives a darn about these kids. You know, there are so many people being left behind, single parents, working parents, families with children with disabilities who are really getting screwed by the current regime. So I think, you know, so much of this often boils down to messaging. So, you know, as I look, it's now past 10 p.m. in the East and down in the Boardwalk Empire included. So many of our problems just boil down to is we need candidates of Jesse's quality, and we got to find them. And Jesse, look, I mean, you know, we've been, you know, saying wonderful things about Jesse tonight, not just because he's our friend, but because we believe them. But you know, it's not like anybody sitting here today is Ronald Reagan or necessarily the next Ronald Reagan or anything like that. That's not what this is about. You just need somebody who's passionate, can string two words together, that's willing to do what Jesse's done in Atlantic City, which is knock on his neighbor's door, establish himself as a human being who shares not only many of their struggles, but also many of their concerns for the community. And once you've established that common humanity, they're then going to listen to you as you begin to talk about some of these deeper issues that affect our day-to-day life that we've been talking about tonight, and we talk about on Save Jersey and More Monmouth Musings and Dan's blog on a daily basis. So, you know, I'm stoked you came on tonight, Jess, because I know you've had a very long day. And I'm so interested in watching this campaign this year, not just because you're my friend and not only because I wish you well and we need you to win, but it really is a rare example in New Jersey of this articulate conservative we've been needing running for high office. And if you pull this off, it's going to be a model for Republicans in all 21 counties. And it's one of the reasons the Democrats are going to throw the kitchen sink at Jesse. You know, not because he deserves to have the kitchen sink thrown at him, but because someone with his skill and his passion and his principles is dangerous. I even think there's probably going to be some Republicans elsewhere that are going to be rooting against Jesse, because again, what Jesse brings to the table is dangerous, but dangerous in a good way for the people of New Jersey and LD too. So keep us in the loop, Jesse, and whatever any of us can do to help you get your message out, never be shy.
You have a website yet, Jesse?
Sure. Yep. Kurtz4nj.com. So Kurtz, FORNJ.com. And, you know, the way I'm going into this is definitely positive. And I'm hoping that I can earn the trust of the delegates who are going to vote at our convention in a few weeks. And so, I'm working hard to connect with them, tell them
what's
who
the
I
date,
am.
Jesse?
They don't have a date. And actually,
they didn't
not
actually
sure.
pick one yet.
Yep. Not yet.
Is there a donate button on your website?
I am hungry, so I gotta no. yes, there is. Yeah, and I could definitely use people's, if they're in a position to make a financial contribution, that would definitely be put to good use and help. But on a lighter side, I mean, one of the ways I look at this is I'm going to learn, if I'm given the chance to be a nominee, all sorts of things about myself that I never knew. So it's gonna, I'll read the mailers and it'll show all sorts of stuff that. I didn't realize I stole that. I didn't realize I lied about no, but
I thought I was a decent guy.
You go to any of those Animal House parties.
That's right.
I won't answer that question, Art.
Will it be a virtual convention or a live convention?
They're not sure. As of today, I was checking in, and so there's a whole bunch of the realities of COVID, but. I think it's a great opportunity. You guys have made my head grow so much, so I guess I should move closer to there. It's growing and growing from all your kind words tonight. But this is real blessed, and more so, I appreciate the opportunity to, get my message out, to talk about the issues with the three of you, and I think it's going to be, God willing, a good, fun campaign of drawing the distinction, kind of showing what needs to happen, what can happen, and. Yeah, I'm stoked. I think it's going to be a good year. We're going to make it a good year.
I think you're right. Jesse Kurtz, Atlantic City Councilman, future LD2 Assemblyman. Thanks for coming on, my friend.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much.
He has a donate button and a donut button. What kind of candidate What other kind of candidate could you possibly want? We will obviously follow Jesse's progress at Save Jersey over the course of the coming weeks and hopefully the coming months and years, if all goes well. And I'm Matt Rooney again from SaveJersey.com. Mark Gallagher, more Monmouth Musings. Dan Cerrucci, the Dan Cerrucci Blogspot. Had a blast as usual. We will be back again next Wednesday. We had Jesse Kurtz tonight, and I've been talking to Dan and Art offline of some of the other folks that we've talked to about coming on to do kind of freewheeling podcast style discussions like we did with Jesse this evening. And some of them I think you're really going to be interested in. And some of them we may end up giving a little bit more of a hard time than Jesse. Not because we're nasty guys, but just because we care and we have to get into some of this stuff because it's all part of this larger discussion we try to have every Wednesday. So make sure you're back here next week. Between now and then, stay safe, stay well, keep working hard to try to save Jersey. Wear a mask, where appropriate, but I'm not going to promote the whole double or triple thing that Fauci wants us to do because I don't want you to suffocate. Apparently, Dan, I don't know if you're allowed to wear them on the plane. I was reading that today.
No, I don't think these are appropriate. They
I don't know
for airplane. I usually fold it over and double it up, but at some places do not accept these. So
they don't. Yeah, I was reading today. I got to do a little bit more reading. I don't know if you're allowed to wear them on an airplane now. I mean, it works for you, but
yeah,
I don't know. We'll figure that out. We'll report back next week. Have a good night, everybody.
Hey, thank you, Matt. Good luck, Jesse.
Thank you, guys.
good luck.
See you, Jess.